Hello guys, in this part we need to talk about SQL Server 2019 system requirements. And as you see in this document we have two parts. The first part we are going to cover quickly what do we need for this system, hardware and software. And the second part, which is big a bit, is when we want to install it, real industry, what other factors we need to take in consideration. So let us start with our lab requirement. With our lab requirement first, this edition doesn't support 32-bit, and there's no problem with that because anyway the operating system is 64-bit. With the hardware, either AMD 64-bit of course, or you need to have of course Intel Xeon, 1GB system memory, or 512 MB for Express edition of SQL. You need to run in this lab at least 1GB. The recommendation is 4GB, and this is what I did. Like in SQL box, in the settings, if we check it back again in here, for the SQL box, if you check the settings, you will see the RAM which I give is exactly 4GB, and for the hard disk is 60GB. You need 6GB for the hard disk space. You will see that. For CPU clock, we have enough speed. Data quality service require additional 2GB of system memory to operate optimally, and that's why we need to have 4GB. If you can even increase that to 6 maybe gigabyte, it would be better. But for the lab purpose, 4GB is more than enough. And here, run 32-bit applications, no support for SQL Server core services. This part we'll talk about it later. And anyway, 32-bit are not going to be in there. We are going to get any management studio with 64 bits. For the software, you need to have at least for the .NET framework an edition 4.6.2. We need to see later how we can detect that, or you can simply use a tool. That tool can help you to check your .NET framework. I'll show you if I access now to my SQL box. And then SQL box, if I log in, this is the tool, double click on it, and it tells you like .NET Framework version on this device is 4.7.2. I need 4.6.2, and then I will be able to install the SQL without any problem. So I met this requirement too. And 6GB of hard disk, we already have 60GB. We just use about 15GB for Windows Server operating system. We have free space of more than 45GB. And Windows Server 2016 or 2019 edition only, we already use 2019 data center. So for the lab, I already have everything. Now let us check in real life what do we have. First, what you will see in here is going to support the installation of SQL Server for Windows only, not for Azure or for Data Warehouse or for Linux. And here this article list minimum requirement and software requirement to install run SQL Server Windows operating system. Just follow this link, it will take you to the evaluation center, but take a look in here in the link, it is for 2016. Anyway, you have a video to download the 2019, and we have the first impression for the installation interface. You can check that. And the following consideration, these are important, you need to take care about. Like when you try to install SQL Server, make sure the partition where you want to install it is either NTFS or REFS. Don't try to install it on FAT32, it's the old one. Now SQL Server setup will block installation or read-only mapped or compressed drives. So if you make it as a read-only, mapped or compressed drive, make sure don't install SQL on it. And installation fails if you launch setup through remote desktop connection with the media on a local resource in the RDC client. Like if you want remotely to install SQL, you need to make sure the path for the SQL package is in a network share drive or to the physical or virtual machine. So make sure about that. SQL Server Management Studio, and not the engine itself, require the installation of .NET 4.6.1 as a prerequisite. .NET 4.6.1 will be automatically installed by setup when SQL Server Management Studio is selected. Anyway, now we need 4.6.2 for SQL Server 2019. This 4.6.1, which is less than 6.2, because the Management Studio, you might not install it on SQL Server. You might need to install it on another server, and from that server, you will access to all instances and engines of SQL Server on all other machines. In that case, that server will use it as a center for the Management Studio to access and do your work with all instances and database engines on other servers. In that server, you need to make sure the network is 4.6.1. And here SQL Server setups install the following software components required by the product SQL Server native client, setup support files. Anyway, this is a bit early to talk about these. For minimum version requirement to install SQL Server Windows Server 2012 or Windows 8, you can follow this link, but this is out of the scope that with what we try to do in here. Hardware and software requirement, this is now when we talk about enterprise version. So for SQL Server, you have these requirements. For 2019, this is 2016. 2019 also we call it 15.x. Require, as you see, network framework for DOS 6.2 available from Download Center to install if you want. Windows 8, Windows 12, we have nothing to do with it. Network software, this is something that we don't need to deal with it now. Shared memory, named pipe, TCP IP, and VIA. This is a bit advanced, like currently we don't need even to talk about because the VIA protocol is not supported on failover cluster. Like these are advanced topics. For now, I prefer not to go with them. Just take it slowly, step by step, because otherwise if we need to go with all these advanced techniques that we might have it in a real network, then this course is going to be very long and very boring, and we need to support it with a lot of labs. So it's technically out of the scope of our course. Later, for failover cluster with SQL, it needs a course by itself if we really want to perform it as what we have it in a real industry network. For the hard disk, we have talked about drive, monitor, internet. Like here with DVD drive, it requires installation from disk. Monitor, SQL Server require like the settings of VGA is 800 by 600. Most of the current monitor resolution is higher than that. And internet functionality require internet access. This is what we have. Now, the processor, memory, and operating system requirement. This is now the minimum that you will have it. We already have more than that, and the recommendation to have even more if you can. Now, what else? Server core support. Like you can install a SQL Server on server core if you want. And of course, it's going to be more secure, and real life, this is what we prefer if you can do it. And it's supported by the following edition of Windows servers. Windows Server 2019 standard, Data Center, both of them, they support the installation of a SQL Server. And with 2016, again, 2016 standard and Data Center, they support it. More information on this link. For 32-bit client, don't go through it now. Later, we will see with all these, like with some advanced courses, how we can solve each one of these by using the newer versions of 64 bits. No more for 32, we need to forget about it. Operating system compatibility. So with SQL Server Edition, you have Enterprise Developer Standard Web and Express. It is compatible with all 2019 and 2016 editions. We have no problem with that. Cross-language support. See, you can follow this link. Here, of course, we are going to do everything in English. And hard disk space requirement, as we had mentioned, it is 6 GB. Here you have some details about how this 6 GB is going to be split. Like this part is for database engine, this part is for reporting services, etc. Storage types for data file, either it is local disk or you can use storage space direct S2D and SMB file share. Here some of these, they are a bit advanced, you might need to use them even with failover clustering. For us, we will use a local disk and installing it on a domain controller. This is not recommended for security reasons. You don't install SQL Server on a domain control, but if you want, also here you have a list of recommendations. So I show you this second part of the document just to know when it comes to real life, the work is a bit different. You need to know exactly what's in there and what kind of settings you need to check before the installation. When it comes to lab environment, this is all what you need to know. Okay, that's all what we have it with the SQL Server 2019 system requirements. Thanks for watching.